go. It's hidden. Fabulous. As you can tell, not very technology savvy. But anyway, so just a bit of usual Zoom etiquette. Please stay muted unless you have a question, but feel free to use the chat function to introduce yourself, post questions, or share any relevant information that you might have. So quick overview of the session. I'm very pleased that we are joined by Adrian Sell, the CEO, and Simon Barnard, the Community Impact Analyst from Oxfordshire Community Foundation. We also have Kate Hood, who is the National Lottery Community Fund Funding Officer for Oxfordshire, and Lorna Cumming-Bruce, the Marketing Manager for ActionFunder. Please excuse my phone. Oxfordshire Community Foundation will start the session. And then will be some time afterwards for some questions, and then we'll move on to the National Lottery Community Fund and ActionFunder. And again, after Kate and Lorna have spoken, we'll have some more time for questions, comments, discussion. So I think the best thing that I can do is go and put myself on mute so that and let Simon start his presentation.
Hello, everybody. Right, I'm trying to share screen, share. There we go. Sorry about my PowerPoint presentation. It's very boring, but it just helps me. It should help me just ramble less, because I get a bit lost sometimes in all of this. All I want to do, copying what Lisa just said, we've seen an enormous amount of work, and done a lot of funding, obviously, of groups through the pandemic. And I think it's one of our, missions now, is that a lot of those groups that have sprung up and, saved their communities, that we do want them to continue and to, carry on and doing work whenever we do get out the other side of the pandemic. Anyway, so I'm going to start just by doing a bit on general, applications for grants. How do I do that? So here we go. Applying for a grant. I just, I review lots of grants every time we have a round, and so it's quite. I kind of know what's impressive and what isn't. The first thing is, I suppose, when writing a grant, is state what the need is. Now, I think all of this needs to be borne in mind as well in terms of proportionality. If you're applying for a grant of £500, you probably don't need to do an awful lot. If you're applying for 10,000, then you probably need to put much stronger argument together about why you should be funded. So first of all, the need. Now, I think I've put up the link there to our community insight page, where you can do all sorts of things with maps and looking at deprivation, demographics of how many old people there are, or how many disabled people are, and all sorts of other things along those kind of lines. So actually understanding what the need is in your particular area and that you are serving. And I think, and then apart from sort of public data, which you can get from there, or you could go to the council website as well, is very good with the Oxfordshire Insights, the joint strategic needs analysis and things along those kind of lines, but also very useful. And then also your own data and experience. So how many people do you see turning up? Do you have to turn people away from whatever your service is? And what's your experience of in your area? Is it obvious that there is a high demand for whatever service you're going to be offering? So I think that's, once the needs there, that how many people and how desperate the need is, that's the first statement you need to make. And then you can get on to, what is your project? What is it? What are you actually going to do? Where are you going to do it? And for how long? I think those, you'd be surprised how many times that's missed off an application, that people might waffle on about the need too much. We need to keep it within perspective and forget to say what they're actually going to do about it. So getting onto the what, where, and when your project is, and how you're going to deliver it. If it's already going on, then obviously explaining how it's been successful, and that brings down to the main bit in a way is the outcome. I'm going to speak a little bit more a bit later on about the sort of monitoring afterwards, but outcomes are, how is your project actually going to change the lives of the people that you're dealing with? What is actually the outcome, not just how many people you're dealing with. So if you're running a lunch club, we're doing a loneliness and isolation round. When you're running a lunch club, that would be, we're running a lunch club 5 times a week, whatever, that would be a output. The number of people turning up is getting towards an outcome, but really your outcome is that this number of people will feel less lonely and have better mental health. So thinking about that, and then obviously how you show that is the indicator. So that would be number of people, often on our forms it has things like number of people reporting that they feel less lonely. Now if they're reporting it, that means you've got to ask them a question, maybe even give them a little survey or a little exercise. I think Public Health once sent me a picture of a washing line with saying, get people to put a peg on it, down one end saying they're very unhappy, at the other end saying they're very happy. And you can get them to come into the thing and put their peg on the line at the beginning of the lunch club, and then put the peg on the line at the end. And if all your pegs have moved to the right, you're doing a good job. So it doesn't have to be complicated, but having a thought about how you can show that you're having that you're meeting your outcome. And then your organisation, you're going to need to you need to have documents if you're dealing with vulnerable people, obviously policies, and that also stretches to obviously equal opportunities and things along those kind of lines. The governance document and your accounts. Again, this is proportional. If you're asking for an enormous amount of money, then you probably need to have, statutory accounts produced by a decent accountant that are all signed and sealed and delivered. We can, dig into those. If you're applying for a relatively small grant, then your management accounts or a spreadsheet that shows what money's coming in and what money's going out is usually enough. And I think, and also to to talk about your experience or the people's experience who are going to be delivering the project. So understanding, just giving it enough information about who the organisation are, and that it feels solid and can be trusted. Is about it. So I'm trying to do this very quickly, so I'm not too boring. I hope it's not teaching everybody something they already know. And then going on to this sort of tips and mistakes, these are really coming out of my own head from the amount of times that we are oversubscribed for every grants round we do, and these are sorts of the things that usually fit into why people end up falling on the wrong side of being oversubscribed. So why we turn people down. Read the criteria. I know that sounds very simple, but I've in fact, just before coming on this call, I've been assessing grant applications for the loneliness and isolation round of funding. And I've just assessed one that has absolutely nothing to do with loneliness and isolation. So they have applied, on the basis that there is money available, but they will not get any funding because it's not it's not meeting what is on our website or any of the documentation explaining what we're looking for. So read the criteria, and actually also I think the other thing that people often don't do is to on our applications forms, there's usually instructions on the application form itself, and again people often don't read that, and so put in information that really isn't very interesting. Get your house in order. This again is another one that I've just assessed today, which I've just sent an email back to the office saying, please can you ask these people the questions. So they've forgotten to include their governing documents or their policies and their bank statement and everything like that. So that ultimately at the moment ineligible. Don't compete, collaborate. Again, we often see, I suppose, applications from organisations where we know there's another organisation probably doing almost exactly the same thing in the same area. If it appears to be a competition, usually we end up not funding either. However, if there is a collaboration, so the two organisations are actually somehow working together, we usually look at that as very favourable and are happy to fund both or them together, as it were. Make sure your budget adds up. I think this comes down to two things. I mean, it's two bits, that it adds up within itself, so that I mean, we tend to like it as sort of almost a shopping list. So if you've got you're asking for some money, write down what each bit is it going on. It doesn't have to be absolutely accurate to the penny. You don't know what it's going to be, but put your staff costs in, put everything that operation, printing, whatever costs, and make sure it adds up to what you're applying for. Also, don't make sure it adds up to the maximum you're allowed to apply for. I find that slightly annoying when we get an application where they somehow put in oh, we also need a laptop or something, and put in another thing. Yeah, so it all adds up to £10,000, which is what the maximum is that they're allowed to apply for. So make sure it adds up, and make sure it adds up to actually what the project that you're applying for, and do include some core costs, a proportionate amount of core costs that it will cost you to deliver the project. That will help you add it up. Be on time. We usually put our grants out for about 6 weeks. The rounds are usually open. We probably get 80% of applications in the last week, and we would prefer it if we got more earlier on. And we always get one or two that come in, sometimes only hours after the deadline, but sometimes days after it, and they're just not going to be eligible. So be on time. If anything, be early. It's a lot better. And also, if you're early, if you have missed something or something hasn't downloaded properly or whatever, then we're going to catch it, and we can get back to you and ask you to send us a bank statement or whatever's missing. Sorry. Make sure your referee knows what they're doing. We usually ask for a referee. The referee can be anyone who's not directly benefiting from the grant, but the number of times referees don't know that they're a referee is numerous, and so when they get a request for a reference, they either don't respond, think it's spam, or or don't know how to answer. So just making sure that they know that they are a referee and what they're actually being a referee for, i.e. if they know what the project is and they know what your organisation is, it's going to be a lot easier for them to do the job. Get to the point, as I'm desperately trying to do and probably failing right now, but get to the point. Don't waffle too much. I mean, we put a word limit on, but I'm as an assessor, I'm delighted if you don't go up to the word limit. You've got a lot to read, and it's just get to the point. Don't do too much waffle of trying to be nice. You don't need to be nice. Be to the point. Bullet points work really well, rather than long sentences. And there we go again. Focus on the outcomes. I think that that's the big thing. Don't the need is very good, but again, don't get tempted into the sort of massive bleeding heart type thing, because I don't think that doesn't work. We want to know what you're going to do and how you're going to change the situation. It's much more appealing. We're probably aware of the fact that of the need. And actually, one other word that Lisa mentioned earlier was sustainability. I think that's this is a tip. If you can think of a way of making your project sustainable, that's very appealing. The donors often, we're very happy to fund and organise a project, but we don't necessarily want to be caught into the idea that we've got to fund it every year for the rest of its life. So if you can think of a way that the project can end up funding itself somewhat after it's got off the ground with our funding, that's always going to be a lot more appealing. What do we expect in this is my sort of topic at the moment, actually, because we've got a new monitoring system, and it is a challenge. But I think what the funder expects in return, I think again this is remembering to be proportional. If it's a large amount of money, then we probably want some quite detailed information back. If it's a smaller amount, then less. This is what I was talking about earlier. So monitoring works in the outputs. There you go. People will run lunch clubs. Outcomes: people will be less lonely. Indicators: people reported that they were less lonely. Number of people reported that they were less lonely. And I think and I think that works for pretty much everything. When choosing or thinking about the indicators, at the moment, my challenge is I've got a new system and I can put down loads of indicators. People can choose which ones they have. Everybody's actually obviously believing that the more they tick, the better, or the more they're likely to get a grant. That isn't the case. Whatever you choose, you will be expected to report on. One is probably enough. You don't necessarily need to choose. People reported that they're less lonely. People reported better mental well-being. People reported that they need better physical well-being and everything, because then you've actually got to ask them all of those questions. So one is probably enough. And then the qualitative bit, some case studies. I'm a great believer in that if you can get a mixture of the quantitative, so number of people, and then one or two really nice case studies, funders and everybody else end up sort of putting one on top of the other. So you tell one story about one person and you say that you had 40 people, everyone believes that the same happened to the other 39 people, which is a great thing. And your budget, did you spend the money as you expected to be spending it? We don't generally ask for receipts, but we could do. And I think that varies with different funders about whether they do want, but lots of whether they want a receipt in full. Are we all right? How am I doing on time?
It'd be great if you could just sort of wrap up in the next minute.
Okay, what we've got now, so at the moment, Oxfordshire Community Foundation have a loneliness and isolation round, so focusing on groups that are tackling that problem. Grants of £500 to £10,000 closes on Tuesday, the 2nd of November. So you've got 2 weeks. You can go to oxfordshire.org and under grants, you will find all the details about it there. We have the Step Change Fund, which is for sort of larger organisations, as it says there, which is the annual income of 75,000 to 750,000. Those are much bigger grants for really sort of infrastructure of the organisation to change into a bigger, better organisation. Then soon we will have a round which is called Community Friendship, and also soon, but early in the next year, is probably for both of these. It's the Queen's Platinum Jubilee, so we'll probably be getting some money for that as well. Those two we may link together because I think they're quite similar, to do with sort of community integration. Queen's Platinum Jubilee will be focusing a bit on sort of arts events, street parties, and things along those kind of lines, particularly on the Jubilee weekend, which I think is in May. So look out for those. That'll do. I think that's everything for now.
Great, thanks, Simon. That's quite a comprehensive overview, and I will circulate the recording to everyone and the presentation so that you've got that for reference. So over to Adrian, who's going to talk to us a little bit about philanthropic donors.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Simon. Thank you, everyone. Firstly, just say thank you to everyone for the incredible work I know you've all been doing over the last year or so through the pandemic. What local communities have done in Oxfordshire is absolutely staggeringly impressive. So thank you for all your parts in that. In terms of philanthropic donors, philanthropists, I mean, there's all sorts of stuff in the media about them, but basically they're people, of course. So getting philanthropic donations and philanthropic support for your organisation or for your cause is about networks and relationships and building those networks and relationships. And looking down the list of people who are attending, there's a lot of place-based organisations here. So building your networks and relationships out through your existing contacts you have in your local area is something that's very easy to do through events, through hosting open sessions and so forth, and getting people in. And you may think, I don't know any rich people. You don't necessarily know who is rich and who isn't, but you also have people like local councillors, local dignitaries. You can invite them along. They'll often be very happy to come along and give a speech. Some philanthropists do have an ego, so keeping that in mind and thinking about ways of feeding that and supporting that. And having that as part of the thinking you're going through. I mean, don't tell them that, of course, but keeping it in mind can be very useful. So it is all about relationships at the heart. Thinking about what causes, what issue you will want to attract them to. If you're place-based, it could be fundraising for a new roof for your building or something where you've got a thermometer, helping them put another stripe on that to get it towards the target. Could be something that motivates them and helps them feel engaged with the local community. It could be around a cause or an issue, and people, all of us, have our own personal motivations about what issues and causes connect with us. Understanding people's backgrounds and histories and what motivates them, asking them about what they're interested in, what they're motivated by, helps you build a picture of them and will help you then present what you're trying to fundraise for in a way that will hopefully connect with them more effectively. We talk about 4 T's: time, talent, treasure, and ties. Everyone tends to focus on treasure, but the others are very important as well. Often if you ask, there was a kind of a saying going around for a while that if you ask people for time, they give money. If you ask people for money, they give time. So asking people to get involved, ask for their advice, their support, who do they know that might be interested in getting involved? Their ties can help build out your ties and your connections and relationships. Their talent, a lot of philanthropists will have come from a business background. Think about engaging them in helping you build your business plan, manage your finances. Some of those business skills can be very relevant to local organizations. Their treasure is obviously ultimately often what people will want to get from people, but it's not just their treasure, it's through their networks and connections, as I said. So keeping those 4 T's in mind: the time, talent, ties, and treasure, and not just focusing on treasure, but thinking about the others as ways of engaging people and building those relationships. Often you'll find you start talking to someone, they start helping out a bit, they get interested, and the money comes further down the line without you actually having to make an ask. We hate making the ask in Britain, I know. Sometimes you don't need to. Sometimes people will just talk to them about what the need is, what the cause is, what the issue is, what funding and resources are needed to help make that happen, and they'll just write you a check. You don't actually need to ask quite often. So it can be a simple ask in a local setting. As I said, a new roof, an event, some new service or activity you want to get up and running. If it's more complex, if it's longer term, a cause, or trying to get an organization off the ground, you need to have a succinct case you can put in front of people. And I've shared with Lisa an example of this from one of the programs we've been involved in called Growing Minds. It summarizes on one side what the cause is, what the issue is, what the work is going to do, what the impact it's going to be, how much money it's going to cost, what the evidence is that it works. And those kind of headings are things that if you can put that in front of someone on one side of a sheet of paper, they may then say, this is really interesting, can you give me more detail? You obviously then need to have the business plan, program plan, and the details behind it to back that up. But it's that one side that will engage people that you can share out through your networks. And ultimately, it's coming back to those relationships and those motivations, building those relationships out, understanding people's motivations and their conscious and unconscious motivations, coming back to the ego question, thinking about what is in it for that person. You know, people want to feel connected with causes. They want to feel connected with their local community. They want to feel like they're doing good. Some people want public praise and acclamation for that. And, you know, putting a stone on the side of your wall that says so-and-so gave, you know, or letting them cut the ribbon can help get people on board and support. Other people won't want that public praise. They will want to stay silent and quiet, and, you know, understanding the difference between the motivations there and the way of working with those people there is really important. But fundamentally, build out your networks, have events, get people involved, get people engaged, get them to understand what you're doing, who you are, what you're about, and the rest will follow. That's it.
Brilliant. Thank you, Adrian. That was a nice potted overview of working with philanthropic donors, all about relationships. And I would say that's also good practice for any donors. You know, if you can start to talk to, whether it's Oxfordshire Community Foundation or the Big Lottery or ActionFunder, you know, or any other trusts and foundations out there, the more that people get to know your work, they get to know you, it all helps to, so that when your application comes in, that's already flagged up to people, they know what you're all about. So has anybody got any questions or comments at this stage? Or do we just keep going to the end and see if there's anything that comes out after the next two speakers? I just had one question, as there doesn't seem to be any. Is there room for personality in a fundraising application? I know when I looked at the ones for our grant fund, there was one application in particular that stood out because it was done in a very sort of individual way. Is that a good or bad thing?
I suppose it depends what the personality is. I think it's a good thing. I think so long as so long as it is professional, I suppose is the thing. I mean, I think you know, a good personality and you know, if it's quirky and it draws attention, then yeah, that's a good thing. You know, but I don't. But if it gets to the point where it's too much personality, I don't know. Then you guess you start thinking it's a politician, which is an awful thing.
Okay, great. So I think we had better move on because we've got a packed session. So Kate, if you would like to tell us all about the community fund, that would be fabulous.
Yeah, thanks, Lisa. Morning, everybody. Thanks very much for inviting me to be here. And quick caveat that I've actually only been with the fund for 4 weeks, so I will do my very best to answer any questions, but bear with me. I will get back to you if there are any questions that come up that I can't answer. So I'm also just going to share some slides with you, if I can make the technology work. Let's have a look. Oops. It seems to be, I don't know, seem to be having a little bit of problem with that now.
Can everyone see the presentation that I'm sharing? Is that better, Kate? If you...
I can see it.
Great, thank you. I think Kate just dropped there. Kate, are you in the room? I tell you what we'll do. Lorna, if it's okay, if we go to you and I'll stop sharing and we'll see if we can get Kate back.
I think I'm back. Am I back?
You are.
Yeah, I'm back. Do you want to go to Lorna, or do you want me to try that?
If you're okay with it, if your presentation's coming up, that's fine, Kate.
Let me just give it one more try, and then we will. Okay, that seems to have worked this time. Is that
perfect? Thank you.
Brilliant. Okay, apologies for that. We're always going to have some technical issues. So we didn't have huge amounts of time. We've now got sort of slightly less, but just a quick overview of if you are interested in applying for funding from the National Lottery Community Fund. I was going to talk to you a little bit about, sorry, slideshow. Oh dear. There we go. So yeah, there's quite a lot of slides to get through, but I'll probably go through them pretty quickly. Just to say that we have been sort of obviously focusing mostly on emergency funding in response to the coronavirus for about the last sort of like 12 months or so, but we are now moving back towards our usual funding programs. So I'll talk to you a little bit about those as we go along. Firstly, a little bit about the team. As Lisa said at the beginning, I'm your funding officer for Oxfordshire. So the likelihood is that if you do apply for lottery funding, that I will be working with you, and I am here to support. So if you do have any questions after this meeting at all, then please do get in touch and I can give you help and guidance. So I'm part of the team for Thames Valley and Chilterns, and that covers Oxfordshire, Buckinghamshire, Berkshire and Bedfordshire. But as I say, I'm working for everybody who is applying from Oxfordshire. And so a little bit about the fund. We are a non-departmental public body, which is an NDPB, which delivers and distributes public funding. We're not part of the government, but we are accountable to Parliament and ultimately the general public. And I think out of all there are 12 different lottery distributors. The Community Fund is the largest of these, and we distribute 40% of the funds raised by the lottery tickets, and that's roughly 23 pence in every £2 spent on a ticket. So that's quite a lot of money. It's usually about 600 million every year. Last year it was 650 million, of which about 200 million was through the emergency funding because of the virus. Sounds like a huge amount, but there is always a lot of competition for lottery funding. So yeah, it's always worth just sort of mentioning that caveat. So a little bit about our purpose. We work on we're a generalist funder, so we're not looking at any specific types of projects, but we do work on the principle that people in their communities know their communities and know the needs of their communities better than us and better than anyone else. So we really try to listen and collaborate with you, talk to you, and then distribute funding that then helps support people and communities to thrive. And those are a couple of our goals. So you'll have this presentation afterwards, so you can have a look at some of this. And I should also say that there is a huge amount of information about what the fund is looking for from your proposals and how to go about applying on our website. So please do have a look at that. So There are many principles that underpin the framework that we work to, but these are the three main things that we are considering when we're looking at proposals. And we talk a lot about having people in the lead. And so for us, it's very, very important that the people that you're working with and working for are involved in the development, design, delivery of your work and project. Sometimes that's easier than other times. You know, it depends on what you're doing, but you know, try to get feedback, try to think about how people are involved with creating and working on your projects. We also want people to be using the skills and strengths that they already have in order to affect changes in their communities. So we want it to be sort of strengths based. And again, I think Simon touched on this when talking about OCF. We also really want to be funding organisations that are working with rather than in competition with other organisations and with other activities that are happening in your community. So that's something that's quite important. We do quite a lot of research, and we know the area quite well. So it's important that you're seen to be working alongside other organisations that are doing similar activities in your area. These are our funding priorities for England, which came from quite a lot of consultation with grant holders, stakeholders, and other organisations across the voluntary sector. So again, it's a lot about, we are called the Community Fund. It's a lot about bringing people together, strengthening relationships in and across communities. We're also wanting to fund ideas that support places and spaces that are important to people and that communities use. So that can be anything from a village hall to sort of like an online forum. So quite a big scope of activity there. And also we're interested in working with organisations that are looking to tackle disadvantage, and particularly at sort of like an early stage. So we're obviously, of course, we're not completely out of the pandemic, unfortunately, so we are still looking to prioritise proposals and projects that are responding to the crisis. So that could be that you're still dealing with the immediate crisis. You could be working on recovery, or you could also, and this is quite important, be looking at changing and adapting, becoming more resilient to future challenges and potential future pandemics, which hopefully that won't happen, but you never know. So again, moving very quickly into the type of funding we offer, we have two main programs for funding, and all this is again on our website. We have the Awards for All program, and we have the Reaching Communities and Partnerships program. Generally, applications should go all through the website, but if you do have specific communications requirements, so if English isn't your first language, or limited access to technology, then you can always give us a shout, and I or someone else can work with you to help you put in an application. So a little bit about Awards for All. So the Awards for All programme is our most popular programme in England. It's designed to be quite simple, quite easy to access. It's usually there to support smaller grassroots organisations, and it isn't managed by us in the regional team, it's managed by our team in Newcastle, but I can still sort of chat to you a little bit about it if you need to. It's anything up to grants of £10,000, usually for a year. It's you're only allowed to have one grant within a 12-month period. It's quite a simple application process. Hopefully you'll find it's quite straightforward, and you usually get a decision within about 12 weeks. So then the programme that I work on more is Reaching Communities and Partnerships. So this is managed by our regional team, and it's really aimed at organisations and communities that are wanting to work on larger proposals. We do try to be flexible and respond exactly to what you need. and you can apply for anything from £10,000 and over. And usually grants are usually, well, at least 2 years, and anything up to 5 years. 3 years is often quite a popular amount of time. Again, it's a rolling process, so both of the funds are on a rolling process. You can apply at any time, there's no deadlines. And again, our process at our end is it does take at least 12 weeks for us to sort of get back to you. Again, applications are online. You can, the fund is again, we're trying to be as flexible as we possibly can to work with you on what you need. So it can be direct costs or project related costs, organisational development, core fixed costs, or capital costs. And capital costs it's your fixed assets. So it's anything like vehicles, buildings, etc., etc. So I'm not going to go again. There's quite a lot of information on the website about this. I know we're a little bit short of time, so I'm not going to go into this in any detail, but you just bear in mind that you don't actually have to be a registered charity to apply. There are other types of organisations that are eligible to apply. So if you're not sure, do have a look at the website. This again is is a little bit about the process. You can have a look at this there's a lot more information on the website. And again, if you want to have a chat with me, I can talk you through this, and you will have the presentation. I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about what we're looking for from an application, but I think, again, Simon did a brilliant job, a very thorough job earlier, and there's a lot of similarities between what the lottery will be looking for and what Simon talked about that the team at OCF look at. But again, quite straightforward. We're trying to keep it simple. What does your organisation do? What would you like to do? Where will your work take place? How you'll involve your community? How your work fits with other local activities? What other people are doing? Who will benefit? What difference it'll make? And how much money you'll need, and how you'll spend it on, and how long you need the money for. Hopefully the application form should take you through this in a quite straightforward way. But you know, do keep it simple, but do try to sort of like build a good case as to the impact. And as we were saying earlier, how is the community and how are the people who will benefit from your project? How are they involved? How are you keeping them involved? That's probably the key message, really. I have a feeling, Lisa, I've probably run a bit out of time.
Yes, I think you have, Kate, but thank you so much. And I think probably people go to the website, have a look at all the information. I will circulate. If anybody's joined the session without registering on Eventbrite, I won't have your email address. So please register after the session, and then I will circulate everything. So thank you so much for that, Kate. That was really informative. And we'll go to Lorna, because this is a really interesting new way to raise funds for your community project. So I'm excited to hear about this.
Great. How are we doing for time? Shall
I think probably 10 minutes if you can manage.
I'll make it happen. Maybe even shorter than that, and we'll have some time for questions at the end.
Fabulous.
So just making sure I can see people, see what's going on. Yeah, I'm Lorna. It's great to be here in a room, even a virtual room, with a bunch of community leaders, and to hear from other funders too. Hopefully I have some interesting bits of information to add what's already been shared this morning. I'm going to be talking about ActionFunder, which is a new business to community funding platform, a new funding option in your funding streams to think about. And I have a few slides to keep me on track. Hopefully we'll have a few minutes to answer questions at the end too. If anything burning comes up as I'm talking, do feel free to interrupt as well.
Excuse me, Lorna, is there any way to increase your sound quality? I'm hearing you're a little quiet.
A little quiet, okay. Any tips on how I might do that?
Have you tried just actually simply the volume on are you on your laptop?
Yeah, Volume's up.
I think you may have to just talk up then, if you don't mind.
I'll talk up, and if people are having further issues, let me know. Is this going to be okay?
Yes, that's great.
Yeah? Okay, perfect. So where are we? First slide. Here we are. This is what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to just jump straight into what is ActionFunder. So we're a new site, and we launched in spring of this year. We've already distributed £300,000 more than to community projects based in the UK, and there are new funds launching all the week, every week, all the time now. This little illustration shows you a bit about how the site works. So we encourage businesses to launch funds on the platform, and then we encourage community groups and charities to post projects that they want to get funded. And just like the best dating sites that are out there, the two get matched. So I'll come back to how you can post a project and get matched in a minute. But first up, the next slide is just going to tell you a little bit about why we launched this platform. So ActionFunder was launched by Semble. Semble's the company that was originally Project Dirt. Some of you may have heard of Project Dirt. It started in about 2005, so we have plenty of experience in supporting community groups across the UK. And that experience taught us a few things. As we've heard here today a number of times already, funds are oversubscribed. They take a lot of time. And we also found that businesses wanted to fund communities and didn't really know how. So we built this platform. It's makes it as quick as easy as possible for community groups to get their hands on funding for projects, really bridging that gap between the businesses that want to do good in their local communities but don't know how, and the community groups that have projects that they want to get funded. So, quickly flying through how it works. Can you see that slide? It looks a bit fuzzy. But
I can see it okay. Is everybody else? Yeah.
Yeah. Great. So there's a 4-step process. You create your profile, which involves going to the site, signing up, confirming your email, and then inputting your basic organisation details. This really is a bit like signing up to a dating site. It's that easy. It can take 5 minutes. It can take half an hour if you want to add all of your information up front and really go for it. But it's quite a simple process, and that profile remains on your ActionFunder dashboard and is relevant to any project you post. So you just put up your organisation details once, and then you can go ahead and upload projects. So you upload any project you want to get funded for. Again, this is a simple online process, and you can answer a set of questions in written form, or you can answer in video form. And we've made that an option so that people can have an opportunity to speak directly to funders and really share what they're doing with the passion that comes through from a video. So having uploaded projects that you want to get funded, you then sit back and wait. And when you get matched to a fund, you get an email letting you know. And if that funder decides to fund you, you'll get an email saying you've been invited to get funded. You can choose to decline if you're not keen on the funder, or you can accept. And then we do our due diligence and fund transfers, and you have the funds in your account within a few weeks. We then ask you to celebrate a bit. So share project updates in the form of posts that you put up on your ActionFunder dashboard. And then fill out an easy to use impact report form that we've developed with the support of community groups. And again, adheres to our quick and easy to use but thorough process. So it really is those 4 steps. We offer guides, workshops, support over email for anyone looking for advice on how to post a winning project. And I think I put on the next slide, let's see, yeah, a little testimonial proofs in the pudding, I think. So this is from a community group lead who won funding just a few weeks ago, and she said that the platform has been the most straightforward, easy to use process she's experienced. Within a month, they completed the forms, heard back, received the money, and started to spend. So it's a quick and easy to use process. Those are the two things that we really try to get across. I'm aware that this probably all sounds a bit abstract and new, so I want to really briefly just jump into the site. And I think I should have linked to, yeah, an Oxford-based project. Perfect. So Oxford Mutual Aid. Are Oxford Mutual Aid here today? No, can't see anyone putting their hand up and waving. So Oxford Mutual Aid signed up to ActionFunder in July, and they've so far won funding for 2 projects. You can see here that their profile is filled out with a description of what they do, where they are, the kind of focus areas that they work on. And then over here, we can have a look at the 2 projects that they have had funded. So for this project, they opted to put up a written pitch rather than a video pitch. And you can see that they won nearly £3,000 of funding, very specific amount they put in there. The grant limit is £10,000. The average grant is around £3,000. We encourage all groups to put core costs into their budgets, at least 10%. And as I said earlier, we encourage groups to post project updates too. So here is a project update posted 3 weeks ago or so, and giving feedback from some of the beneficiaries of the work that this group is doing. So I think I'm just about going to manage this on time, because I'm going to go back to, try to go back to the little slideshow. And I'm switching between screens and I'm not used to it. So trying to get used to this techiness right now. This just last slide about the funds that are currently live on the platform. I said that, you know, £300,000 has gone through already. There are funds launching every week. There have been funds specific to the Oxford area. There was one called the Freeman Fund, and that was run by the Freeman Foundation, and one by Sir Robert McAlpine, the building firm, had an Oxford-based fund. Funds are launched either specifically to a location or specifically to a cause. So on the left here, you can see Proud to Pitch In. That's round 1 of 5 rounds of funding that Green King are putting out for grassroots sports projects across the UK. So that's a cause focused fund, £100,000 worth of funding going out there. And then you can see here a few location-based funds. We have funds live in Cheshire, London, Manchester, Birmingham at the moment, and in conversation with funders in other parts of the UK too. So do keep your eyes open for funds launching in Oxford on ActionFunder. If you sign up to the site and fill out your organisation details, you will be pinged when any relevant funds launch. So if you prefer to work in that way rather than posting speculative projects, you're welcome to do that too. Now, I'm nearly done, but before I go, I think it'd probably be useful to say that we do run workshops as well to support groups in using ActionFunder. It's quite a new approach to funding, and we're aware of that, and also generally upskilling. So our next session is on the 2nd of November, and that's on kind of how to post a project pitch and speak the funders' language, covering some of the points that I think Simon spoke about at the top of the session today, funding terminology and the difference between outputs and outcomes and bits and pieces like that. So I will pop a link to that session into the chat in case that's useful. And we might have time for a question or two, but if not, do get in touch. We're a friendly bunch of people, very keen to answer anyone's questions. My email is lorna@actionfunder.org. We also have a hello@actionfunder.org email address monitored by my lovely colleagues. So there you go. I think that's me.
That's fabulous. Thank you, Lorna. There was one question. Just let me go back to it. I think it was at Wendy. So Wendy Watson said, does it need to be a project that to be put up for funding?
Does it need to be a project? So project is sort of the terminology that we use to mean like any one-off pot of funding you're looking for, and that could be to re-roof the local hall, or it could be to cover the cost of X number of meals for your meal delivery service. So it's really about isolating an amount of money that you're looking to get funding to achieve a project for. If that makes sense, hopefully that answers the question.
That's great. That also answered another question from Jane, who said she was having problems accessing funding for sort of community halls and that type of thing. So that sounds like that could be a perfect match for ActionFunder. Emily, yes.
Just on these sort of, is there any way that a group could be creative about? Because obviously, let's think, if you're thinking about ongoing voluntary work, actually that's really quite difficult when it's not that single project. So you don't want an end date to it. So let's community transport or volunteer drivers. If you wanted that to just be supported, is there a way that you could sort of frame it as a project, but actually it is an ongoing service and really valuable?
Absolutely, yeah. We're very aware that this is only one of many funding streams that people need to use to be sustainable. And so being creative and putting up a project that covers the costs of some of what you are delivering is definitely a good way to go, and doing that in conjunction with applying for other types of funding for other parts of what you're up to, because obviously putting all your eggs in one basket is never a good idea. So mixed funding streams and using ActionFunder at the same time as using some of the other options we've heard about here today is always going to be a good idea.
Thanks, Lorna.
No problem.
We just had somebody wanting your email address. I've just popped it in. So that's been brilliant. Thank you, Lorna. Thank you, Kate and Simon and Adrian. That's been really interesting. Apologies that we've run out of time. Hopefully that was useful. I will circulate a package of information, people's contact information, linked websites, presentations, and anything else that I think will be useful. Excuse me, I did attend an ActionFunder session, so I do recommend them. They're very informative, and we will be doing a few more sessions like this over the next coming months. The next one will be on volunteering. There'll be one on impact and one on active listening. So I'll be circulating through all the channels that I did previously for this session. I don't know if anybody's got any final comments or questions, because I think we've run out of time.
I just very quick one, which is partly ActionFunder. Can you accept donations from other people? Like, can you have a page like a Just Giving or Local Giving page? No. Okay.
No, it's just matching live funds that have been put up by foundations or businesses to community projects. Yeah.
Okay. So I would just then put that in as well in the mix, that especially if you're a small group or whatever, joining a local giving, Just Giving, various other ones that are going is another good way of raising money. Local giving is good, actually. They always come around with every year they do a £500 national lottery magic little grant as well. which you basically say, I'd like it, and they give it to you, something like that.
I think Space Hive is another good option for that as well, for getting kind of crowd-funded projects.
Yeah.
What was that, Lorna? I missed.
Space Hive.
Space Hive.
I will.
Okay, I can send that link. I'll add that link as well.
And there's the Good Exchange as well, which is a sort of a mixture in a way of ActionFunder and local giving, in that you can, but it is a bit more complicated in filling in.
Great. Well, I'll try and pull all of this information together. We have run out of time, but for those that are staying on the call, we do have John from OCVA, because OCVA do provide fundraising support. So maybe, John, you could just give us 2 minutes for those that are able to stay on the call, just so that they know what they can come to you with and what support you can give.
Yeah, certainly. So OCVA, we do support groups with fundraising, and we can look at things like application forms, all those sort of things, give you an independent eye over those if you need support with stuff like that. I guess the big thing for me was something that Simon mentioned earlier around the way people construct their application forms, and it's something people get wrong quite easily. It's need, demand and supply. And if you can get those things in there and involve, and something that came out from the lottery as well, the major point from them would be involving people in the design and delivery of projects. And a lot of groups do that, they just don't articulate that in their application forms. Most of you are probably doing it all the time, it just never gets put down on paper. And that's probably the most important thing at all about making funding applications. So if you need support with that, we do give funding information. We also have subscription to funds online. So if you want to search for funders, we can provide you with a sign on that, providing you're a member. But if you're a small group, you can join us for nothing anyway. So there's various bits and pieces we can do. I'll put my email, actually, I'll get Community First to send my email around with all the other ones. And then if anyone needs any support, just contact me. Great. But it was quite interesting in the both the major funders here, i.e. the Community Foundation and the lottery, were coming up with some very similar points about identifying need, and involving almost service users in the design of the project and the delivery of the project. And that's probably the biggest lesson from the day for me, is just cottoning on to that and understanding that almost all funders want to see that in their application. And there was something said about personality earlier, and I don't think it's about the personality of an application. It's the narrative that matters. And if you can build those things into your narrative, then you're basically giving your application some personality and people will notice it. So I'll leave it at that, and I'll get the details sent round. And if you need any support, just let me know. Thank you.
Great, thanks, John. Yeah, so OCV are there to help support you. We've gone over. Thank you for staying with us. I hope you found this interesting and useful. Always happy to have some feedback if there's any other things that you think could support your fundraising efforts. And I'll say goodbye. Thank you to all the people who presented, to OCVF, to Kate, to Lorna, and I wish you all a very pleasant day. So bye for now.